Hello students, today we are going to study critical path method. Now the introduction of critical path method is written here. The major difference between the two techniques is that CPM does not incorporate uncertainties in job times. That is, time estimate is deterministic. It means that CPM only deals with the deterministic approach, whereas PERT deals with the probabilistic approach. It assumes that activity times are proportional to the amount of resources allocated to them, and by changing the level of resources, the activity times and the project completion time can be varied. CPM is mostly used in construction projects where there is prior experience in handling similar projects from which relationship between resources and job times are available. It means that for construction project, the time is within a particular range, that is of deterministic approach, so CPM is used for the construction project. CPM then evaluates the trade-off between projects and project completion time. Now comparison between PERT and CPM is written here. In PERT, network diagram is event oriented. In CPM, network diagram is activity oriented. It uses probabilistic approach and is suitable for research and development and non-repetitive projects. It uses deterministic approach and is suitable for repetitive type of project. 3 time estimates are given for completion of an activity in PERT. Single time estimate is given for each activity in CPM. PERT follows beta distribution, whereas CPM follows normal distribution. Cost of project is directly proportional to time, and hence to minimize the project cost, the project completion time is minimized. But in CPM, cost model has to be developed using which minimum cost of the project is found. In PERT, critical events are identified by using the concept of slack, whereas in CPM, critical activities are identified by using concept of float. Now in PERT, critical path will be the path joining the critical events, whereas in CPM, critical path will be the path joining all the critical activities. That is the comparison between PERT and CPM. Now the next topic is the event time. After deciding the estimated time duration T of activity, we determine the time of occurrence of the event. Now earliest occurrence time, that is Te. It is same as that of the case of PERT, that is the maximum of TEI plus TEIJ, that is the activity duration. Now latest allowable occurrence time is also same as that of PERT, that is minimum of TLJ minus TEIJ. Now we have to find the start and finish time of activity. As the CPM networks are activity oriented, therefore the following activity times are useful for network analysis. That is, the first one is earliest start time, that is denoted by EST. It is the earliest time by which the activity can commence. It is equals to the earliest event time, that is TEI, for the event from which the activity arrow originates. If the activity is denoted by Ij, then EST of Ij will be equals to TEI, where TEI is the earliest event time for the tail event. Now the next time is the earliest finish time denoted by EFT. It is the earliest time by which an activity can be completed. It is equals to the earliest start time plus the activity duration, that is EST plus TEIJ. So EST will be equals to TEI. So the formula will be equals to EFT will be equals to TEI plus TEIJ. Now the next one will be the latest start time, that is LST. It is the latest or delayed time by which activity can be started without delay the completion of the project. LST is equals to the latest occurrence time, that is TL, for the event at which the activity arrow terminates, that is TLJ, minus the duration of the activity, that is TEIJ. Now LST for IJ will be equals to TLJ minus TEIJ. Now the next one will be the latest finish time, that is LFT. It is the latest or delayed time by which the activity can be finished without delaying the completion of the project. It is equals to the latest occurrence time, that is TLJ, of the event at which the activity terminates. For activity ij, LFT will be equals to TLJ, which is written here. Now one note is written here that activity name, EST, EFT are written above the arrow which is shown here, while the activity duration, LST and LFT are written below the arrow which is shown here. Now the next topic is the float. Float indicates the time by which starting or finishing of an activity can be delayed without affecting the project completion time. It is associated with an activity and is analogous to the term slack. Now slack is used in PERT whereas float is used in CPM. Now the first one will be the total float. The difference between maximum time available and actual time required for the completion of activity is equals to the total float. Maximum available time we can get when activity start at earliest start time and finished by latest finish time. Actual time required for performing an activity is the estimated activity time, that is TEIJ. Now total float will be equals to LST minus EST or LFT minus EFT. Both will give the same answer. Now one note is written here that total float of an activity is a measure of a particular activity, but it depends on the succeeding and preceding activities by the virtue of TL and TE respectively. Now the next one will be the free float. It is defined as the amount of time by which an activity can be delayed without affecting the EST of succeeding activity. In other words, it is that portion of total float that can be used by an activity without delaying any succeeding activity. Now free float will be equals to total float minus slack of jth event. Now one note is written here, that is free float is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without affecting the commencement of a subsequently activity at its EST, but may affect the float of a previous activity. Now the next one will be the independent float. It is the amount of time by which an activity can be delayed when all the preceding activities are completed as late as possible and all succeeding activities started as early as possible. Now independent float will be equals to free float minus slack of ith event. Now independent float does not affect the float of preceding and succeeding activities. Now the next one will be the interfering float. It is defined as difference of total float and free float of an activity. It is also equals to the slack of head event of head activity as shown below. It will be equals to total float minus free float. The next topic is supercritical, critical and subcritical activity. The most important type of float is total float because it is involved with the overall project duration. As discussed before, the total float is the difference between the maximum available time and the activity duration. There are three cases. The first one will be the negative total float, when the total float value is negative. If the maximum available time for an activity is less than activity time, the total float will have a negative value. Such activity demands special attention because available time is less than required time, and hence these are termed as supercritical activities. It means that these activities are behind of its scheduled completion time. For such activities, activity time are adjusted by developing extra resources such that total float either becomes 0 or positive from the original negative value. Now the next one will be the zero total float. If the maximum available time for an activity is equals to the activity time, then for the activity total float will be 0. Activity for which total float is equals to 0 is known as critical activity because such activity demands above normal attention with no freedom of delay. It means that these activities are on time, and if any activity is delayed then the overall project will delay. Now the next one will be the positive total float. If the maximum available time for an activity is more than the activity time for this activity, total float will have positive value. Activity for which total float is positive is known as subcritical activity, demanding normal attention but allowing some freedom of action. Now the next topic will be the critical path. Critical path is the longest path time wise in a project. This time also gives project duration. In CPM, critical path passes through the critical activities, that is activities having total float equals to 0. Now one note is written here that in CPM, critical path passes through those events where slack is 0, although there is a necessary condition but it is not sufficient condition. That is all about the critical path method. Thank you, students.